I'm pretty good. How you
How's it?
doing?
Yeah, very good, mate. How's things going? How's things going in your life, Den?
Yeah, pretty good. Been working from home for 2 weeks now, so
Yes,
haven't dusted off the board games yet, but
you got some board
yeah.
games ready to go, have you? What have you got? You got some scotch there? What do you got? Some whiskey? What have you got?
Oh, just water at the moment.
I was a little bit disappointed. I was hoping I'd see a bit of a shot of something there.
I could pour some Johnny Walker. I have some Johnny Walker available.
Yeah. So anyway, welcome along to the podcast, episode 96 from the Valley Podcast. The guest today, Den Williams, a good friend of mine. We share a lot of interests. He's a business analyst working at ACU, correct?
Yeah, Australian Catholic Uni.
Yeah, Australian Catholic Uni. So, and that's is that keeping you fairly busy at the moment, mate? Working from home.
I work on a project. I work on a project around class selection. So there's plenty for us to do. We're sort of in the middle of a medium to large project. So there's plenty to do, and all the teams are pretty much working from home, and we've transitioned all teaching to online. So just that in itself for like some teams is a massive undertaking to take like their timetable and put online. So um, it's interesting because we'll probably be looking at another online semester, and a lot of the work I do is kind of impacted by that, I guess. So
So
that'll be really interesting.
prior to the last few weeks, have you been working at home from home before, or not really?
No, I've never really worked from home. Wouldn't say I resisted it, but I was keen to keep in the office as long as possible. So some teams actually did working from home on a trial. So like half the team in for, well, a team in for half a week at a time on a roster basis. So, at the end,
Yep.
there's about 40 people on my floor. So there was getting to be about 8 to 12 people in on any given day, which was kind of nice. But I've only been doing the work from home for about 2 weeks now. Yeah.
And how have you found it?
Really good. I try to keep it nice and varied. We've just got 2 workstations set up here, so we have one study area. I've got a spare one in Leo's room if I need it, but I sort of float around with the laptop in different rooms just to keep it a bit kind of interesting, because I don't want to stay glued to the one spot, because I do miss having like that sit to stand desk that I have in the office. So that's that's something I really miss having, actually.
Cool, man. So usually some of the things I sort of discuss at the start of the podcast, I guess, where was early life for you? Where were you born? Were you sort of born in this sort of area, or did you come from somewhere else?
Yeah, born in Brisbane, pretty much lived just about all my life here. So yeah, nothing too exciting there. So born in the Redlands
area.
Yeah, that's sort of a nice place to live near Wellington Point there. So that was always nice to grow up there. Having like a beach close by and all those nice little community aspect. That was awesome place to live, to grow up. Yeah.
Cool. And as a youngster, what sort of sports did you get into? What sort of sports did you like sort of playing and following when you were young?
Oh, basketball, definitely. That was what I most enjoyed playing, and would still love to today, actually. So hopefully when Leo's old enough, he'll want to play a little basketball as well.
Cool.
I played AFL very poorly, but did love athletics and that kind of stuff. So a volleyball as well. So
volleyball. Okay.
So love those team sports. Yeah.
Team sports are cool. That's for sure, man. And as a when you're growing up, any particular position, like sort of playing in the guard positions, or what were you playing?
I was forward and occasional centre. So if I was the tallest person playing at the time, I'd be centre, of course. But so for school, it'd be rotating between those positions. But so I think more of a small forward position when I played like with Redlands and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I used to play basketball growing up. It's certainly a fun sport. I loved it. I mean, I played soccer for a little while. But it was soccer and then probably basketball and little athletics in between. That's what I sort of got into. But basketball, even to this day, I still love watching it. Still, like yourself, I mean, I follow the NBA, and it's quite great to watch. But just over a month ago, we had all of a sudden it sort of hit us like a smack in the face. Really, two guys contracted the coronavirus, and all of a sudden the NBA is indefinitely suspended. Rudy Gobert, the French center for Utah, and then it all just ceased. So who knows when it's going to come back? But I know you sort of like following it.
Yeah, and this was my year in the fantasy, so I kind of got a bit shafted there. I was looking really good for a top 100 finish on Sports Deck, but I have to wait till next year. But yeah, they moved pretty quick to shut everything down, and well, good thing they did, particularly in the United States.
Oh,
Because it's really tough. Imagine if things kept rolling on, how bad it would be.
mm.
It would be so much worse than it is now, and it's pretty bad.
Yeah, I'm surprised how bad it is in the States, but it is what it is, and they've especially in New York in particular. Take the New York numbers out; it's probably a fairly normal country, but New York
Yeah,
has sort of really sort of made the stats the worst in the world when you're looking at the infections and people that have even died. So it's pretty crazy there in the States when it comes to that.
yeah.
But yeah, no,
And they have more people in a state sometimes than we have in the whole country. So that we have a bit of natural social distance being Australian. So
yeah.
yeah.
So growing up, what was your first job as a teenager? What was the first? Can you remember what your first job was?
First job was I did work at the supermarket, but absolute first job, I worked for my neighbour. So we lived on a 5-acre property in Wellington Point, and my neighbour had a worm farm, and I
A
used to
worm
go
farm.
work for him. Yeah, so it was pretty random, but we just used to go out and have to collect all the fertilizer to make up the boxes, and so he'd grow them and sell them to, I don't know who we'd sell them to, but he used to make up boxes that people with nurseries or whatever would probably buy, and people would buy for their gardens as well to keep their gardens healthy. So that was like a pretty cruisy job. So you're just tending them, feeding them, etc. And after that, I worked in Woolworths.
Yeah, Woolworths. Okay, so yeah. Spent many years at Woolies, or
That was just sort of a bit more of a serious job for, I think, just the last few years of senior high school. So I think it was 2 years. Yeah.
yeah. Is it true that you worked for that pancake place in the city? There's a rumor that I heard that you worked there.
Oh yeah, that was after. That was a few few years after that. So I went and I was a glazier for a couple of years. Did my
Mm.
apprenticeship and then worked in restaurants. So yeah, that Pancake Manor. Yeah, less said about that, the better maybe. But made so made so many great friends there, and that's really for me where I guess in some ways putting the work aside where a lot of life began. Like I met Beth there, so really
Yep.
great times, and some great friends which we still hang out with to this day.
No, that's cool, man. But yeah, so a glazier as well. So you did your apprenticeship as a glazier. What can you remember? Did you enjoy that? What was that like?
Probably wasn't for me. I did enjoy it though. That's the thing. It's just not a work I'm probably naturally suited to.
Mm,
So I got a few apprenticeship awards. So
mm.
I made the best of it. And
Oh,
again,
that's good, man.
yeah, and oh, thanks. And you kind of learn to, with apprenticeships. I think for me, the real value is you kind of learn your place and how to develop within a workspace. So even if it's not the job you want to do, it can springboard you into so many different areas. So, and you do learn a lot of skills about being patient, about doing something well, and appreciating what you do. So I think, that's sort of, it led to a lot of other interests, I would actually say, because when I worked in glazing, I worked a lot with stained glass windows, which had a bit of an artistic bent. So
Yeah.
yeah, it was not just the kind of supermarket front shop shop front kind of stuff, that it does stimulate your creativity in all these different areas. So that's that fed into me wanting to draw and increase my skills there, and so it actually fanned a lot of interests.
No, definitely. I mean, everything you do in life shapes you one way or another, whether it's for a short time, a long time. There's always something you'll learn out of something. But
Absolutely.
I mean, when I was pretty young, probably when in about 1988 and 89. That's when That's about when I first started listening to music. And I remember back in the late 80s and what the sort of music was like back then. And that was sort of my first, I guess, experience in listening to music. And I'll never forget those sort of years. Did you sort of get into listening to music when you were that young as well, or?
Let's see. For me, I think I was a little bit older.
Mm.
And maybe I just didn't like the music around at the time.
Oh,
Just trying to think about when. Maybe it was the early 90s, early to
yeah,
mid 90s, and then it
yeah.
really just that interest came on strong because there was just so many things I really loved. So maybe for me, Seattle was in the music scene when I started to listen more and pay attention more and think that music was more relevant in my life.
Mm.
Because a lot of the 80s music to me, you know maybe I was too young at the time to really process it. I don't know, but I don't have fond memories of that as, say,
The
you know,
90s. Mm.
yeah, like listening to Soundgarden and then having all these great Australian indie acts come in over
Mm.
time, and
Mm.
there just seemed to be a lot of interesting music come out in that decade, and
Mm.
even through the electronic music, Chemical Brothers,
Yeah.
just had so many interesting things. It was a very, when I was trying to make a playlist of the
Mm.
90s, like my favorite 100 songs for that decade, it was such a polarizing decade, like one song totally different to the next. And that's what I like. The music was definitely so different.
Yeah, no, so many different bands that in the 90s. That's when it sort of came alive, really. All the different bands that were there. I mean, it started off at the start of the decade with Nirvana. You had Nirvana and Kurt Cobain, and they made a huge splash. And then it sort of went to bands like Offspring and the Red Hot Chili Peppers, uh, Green Day, and then Powderfinger. What do you think? What did you think of Powderfinger? Sort of a group, local here.
Oh yeah, Powderfinger. They saw them a few times.
Mm.
So good. Just I think it was their second album, Double Allergic. That's always been a favorite for a long time, and so much respect. And even at the time, Silverchair as
Oh
well.
yeah, you can't forget Silverchair, man. That's
Yeah,
that's revolutionary. Daniel Johns was one of a kind. That Tomorrow is just such an anthem as far as Australia is concerned. It's
mm.
it's just a it's just a huge anthem. So
He's a bit
um,
underappreciated today, I think, Daniel Johns.
yeah, well, the thing is, people forget about the guy. I think too much. I mean, he needs to probably come back and do something. But
Yeah.
Daniel Johns just had so many. They had so many big hits, Silverchair, and
Mm.
they sort of they did quite a lot at the end of the day. And people forget how big they were when it comes to Australian music.
Yeah, and like the album he released, I think it was 2015, Talk, is just one of my favorite albums of
That's the
this
last one,
current
isn't it?
decade.
That's the
Yeah,
last.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
he never made the hottest 100 that year, but it's a
No,
fine album. Fine album.
I did like some of those songs on that album, and I'll never forget with Daniel Johns. One thing that sticks out to me about 6 or 7 years ago, whenever it was, maybe 6 years ago, they had that show, that Triple J show where it was in Sydney. I'm just trying to think where it
Was it
was.
Luna Park?
They had this one once-off special show. They didn't have like one of those. Uh, one night stands. I had this instead, and Daniel Johns sung Nirvana's "Smells Like Teen Spirit," and it was just amazing how he did that. If you ever haven't seen that, that was.
I think I heard that on live, like Triple J playing that after the fact. Yeah, it was really good.
Yeah,
amazing.
Yeah, no, it's some great memories there. I mean, music's has certainly been a big part of my life. I know it's been a big part of your life, and there's certainly a lot of the genres that we sort of like can be, as of today, are fairly. There's a lot of crossover there, but it all started in the '90s with a lot of great bands there, and I guess even recently we've sort of seen a few good promising artists together. We've been to see Rufus together, and we've also G Flip and Tones and I think that was a few in just in the last 12 months. So some quite memorable acts that we've seen there, Den. And I guess
absolutely.
What do you think is the most impressive thing that you've seen live when it comes to music? What is the most thing that sticks out the most?
Well, that sometimes when I have a box of all the old stubs around, and
oh really,
like from everything I've ever seen, I've always tried to buy the ticket and put them in a little envelope, and every now and again when you move house or do something, you find this and you just can't believe what you've seen. Because I used to go to see bands every week or two at a certain time in my life, but trying to think about what was totally amazing. Gorillaz is definitely up there. That was something that was a show that was out of this world. I'll try put it to the that big stadium experience. I think Gorillaz is number one.
Where were they playing? Where were they playing?
That was Boondall. And so the multimedia element they brought to it, having all their stories of their characters and everything, and I just thought that was such an interesting production and really cool. But sometimes trying to remember, I'd say when the Chelsea was running, there were some of my favorite shows that I ever saw there, and they could be small bands that people would probably not know of anymore, not remember. But there was some cool stuff going on there. I think one of my favorites of the kind of indie to see live was Not From There. They had a really interesting metal sound with a lot of things going on. So, and I probably saw them about 10 times or at least a dozen times in a couple of years while they were going around. So they were really, very memorable to me.
Yeah, man. I don't know what I could say as my favourite band, favourite sort of thing of all time. I've been to a couple of festivals. One of my favourite bands of all time is definitely the Wombats. I love the Wombats. I've seen them a few times. So yeah, there's definitely they sort of know how to really put a show on. Hilltop Woods is definitely one. Have you ever seen them, Den? Hilltop Woods?
No, I haven't. I'd probably be widely criticised for not seing them. Well, so I probably had many opportunities.
Yeah, well, I think it was only last year I saw them, but they're really, really good. The Wombats, these guys put on really good live shows, and yeah, they're just amazing. I mean, I like how the Wombats really support Australia. I mean, as far as Triple J making sure that the songs come out, that sort of really, were supportive. So the Wombats certainly stick out to me. I mean, my wife Fiona sort of got me onto them, but I sort of, once you hear the sound and you like the sound, you just keep loving the sound, and that particular one, and same with Hilltop Woods. It's hip hop's something you've got to appreciate, and I don't like all types of hip hop. There's some that I like and some that I don't like, but Hilltop Woods is definitely a show in itself. That is for sure. I mean, I do like Illy, but I like it's Hilltop Woods is just what they do there. It's just fantastic. Electronic genres. I mean, Rufus we've seen a couple of times. That's quite nice. They've got lots of different types of things they can play.
They were really great.
I've never seen Flume live. Have you seen Flume?
No, I would love to.
Yeah, I haven't had
Um,
I haven't really got round to Flume. That's probably one I should have seen.
I've seen Chemical Brothers a few times now. Love them.
I know one
You
of your
know,
favourites.
yeah, Porter Robinson on for
Yep,
electronic dance music.
yep.
He was phenomenal for the price ticket. I mean, when Language played at the River Stage, and they do that thing where they explode the ticker tape, and as part of the encore. That's probably for the single moment, that single great song. That's it for me.
Mm.
And that was something that when I was listening to the hottest 100 of the decade, I was shocked that song just didn't get in there.
It's so. I mean, let's go to the hottest 100 of the decade. That was such an interesting experience recently. I mean, we sort of you have a fairly good idea which songs are going to make the hottest 100, and then what's popular. I mean, that's fairly, and we've been around long enough that's fairly not so. It's easy to predict a lot of the time. It's easy to predict how popular songs are as well. But with something like the hottest 100 of the decade, there's so many good songs that people just would have been oblivious to when it comes to the hottest 100 of the decade, and you get these weird songs that come in, and you're saying, who's voting for all this sort of stuff? I mean, there's a lot of Kanye West we heard in the
Yeah.
countdown, and people love Kanye West, and there were about 4 or 5 Kanye West songs in the top couple of hundred that had never been in the hottest 100 before. Um, there was Niggers in Paris. I don't think that was ever made it. That was like in the top 25 or something. It was quite crazy. People were sort of enjoying watching all these songs. I mean, there's obviously the story of Inner Bloom. Inner Bloom obviously originally didn't make the hottest 100, but came number in the top 6 or 7, didn't it? I think this.
Yeah, I thought it did make the hottest 100, but I was clearly mistaken. I
I think
think,
I think the What So Not remix did. I think the What So Not remix was in the top 30 or top 40, but I'm pretty sure. But the original song, I don't know, it was for some reason or another, there were other things that were going on, and it was just sometimes things get released at the wrong time.
I actually do agree with you there. I think the release date of Bloom meant that a crop of songs were in from one year and a crop were in from the next year.
Yeah,
So it might have just been one of those things in terms of timing missed out, and it's a
definitely. Yeah.
9-minute epic. It's their version of like Private Psychedelic Real. Maybe those songs aren't appreciated fully at the time. They need that. They need years to develop and really set and get into your mindset.
Definitely a great song, and whether it's my favourite song of theirs, I don't know, but it's definitely it's that anthem that it's all about. So I guess, were you surprised about Tame Impala winning the hottest 100 of the decade with Less I Know the Better? I certainly was surprised, but I think I knew that song was going to do well, but to win.
Because they were, I think, third in the year of their song, third or fourth.
Fourth, yeah,
I
and fifth,
thought,
yeah.
I honestly thought Flume was going to bolt in with a,
Yeah, it'll be like
with
you.
with space in the middle between the next person, because Flume is like super popular. But I'm glad for Tame Impala. I love them. So disappointed that their show, of course, is postponed till the end
Have you
of the
seen them
year.
live yet, Don, or not, Dan?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, no, it's a
And I've
great
probably had
show.
my chances, but
Well, they've obviously got a few more songs to add. They've got another album to add since I last saw them. So I saw them after Currents had come out at the River Stage, and me and Fiona went along 3 years ago, whenever it was.
yeah,
Um,
the new album's good. It's good. I give it a 7 or an 8, though. I'm not quite loving it the way I love Lonerism or Currents.
I do like that song "Lost in Yesterday." I think that's I think that's released this year too. So I think that's got some sort of chance of doing something, just based
Oh
on
yeah, it'll do well.
just based on their popularity, and based on that being
Mm.
probably the best song on the album. I think. I don't know. What do you think the best song?
There's a there's about 5 songs I really like. The one that got in the top 20 last year, I quite like.
Borderline, or
It Might Be Time.
I think Borderline did the best from memory.
Yeah, I really love It Might Be Time. I think the same
Yeah,
one, the track 8, sometimes the names don't stick with me for quite a while, but I love track 8.
yeah.
It might be the one you're thinking of.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, man. So we could talk about we could certainly talk about music all day, couldn't we? Really,
Yeah.
we could spend fucking hours talking about our favorite tracks and our favorite music songs. But is any other before we sort of leave this topic, any other music sort of acts that you want to sort of make sure that we don't forget?
Oh, well, I think, well, I haven't even mentioned Lana Del Rey, which is a surprise, but yeah, love seeing her.
So
But
you've seen it.
I think
You've seen her live. Tell me about that experience. Is she one of the best ones live that you've seen?
that was immense and incredible, because I think in terms of how prolific she is for being an artist that just came along really in this decade, having such a strong body of work that's performed so well. I mean, it's one of those ones that I'll remember for a long time. And she's one of those artists as well that I think there's a group of artists you have that you can go, okay, if they tour, there's no manner of money that it costs, I'm going. So she's up there with somebody I haven't seen, Daft Punk. Like
Oh,
if they tour, you
yeah,
know, for me, even Royksop makes that. And that would be, they're a bit out of left field actually, but I would love to see them. So I think maybe the ones that I want to see next are, you know, Björk. If Björk toured, uh, I would fly. I would, do anything to see her play.
yeah.
She's amazing.
Mm. Is there anything? I guess is there anything on Triple J more recently that you've heard that you think is going to be a big hit that aren't that popular at the
Oh,
moment, or
see,
not?
this is the whole problem with working from home. This is one of those, the thing you miss about working from home is you don't get that little commute for me where you listen to like just 25 minutes of great music before you get into the office. So I'm probably not, I've probably got a short list somewhere of what I'm thinking of voting for already this year, but yeah, I'll take advice from you on that. Actually, you'll have to tell me what's good, because I know
Well, it's still I don't
you've
know.
got your finger on the pulse.
It seems to be pretty early in the year still, but there was this artist that came out in the last week that I heard that was worth listening to. They think that she's going to be the next Lord. I don't know if you heard this.
Oh,
Gracie
I
somebody.
I think I do agree. I did hear that recently, and I quite liked it.
I think it's Gracie Abrams. I think I'm pretty sure she's about 20 or 20. Is it her? I think so. Yeah. Anyway, they said the same guy that sort of um, looked after Lord and Broods, Joel Little,
Oh, okay.
because he's done really. He's fucking smart. This Joel Little guy. He's
Actually,
produced some good.
just pulled up my 2020 playlist that I've started.
Yeah.
Torrin Foot, loving it. Um, but Jaguar Jones is my dark horse pick this year. I think that's Jaguar Jones will do well, and she's
There you
one that I
go.
really want to see.
Yep. Mm.
And I'll add that one you noted onto my list.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So anyway, big NBA followers, and we obviously it was obviously a shame that we've had the sports world sort of there's no sport at the moment. Not sure if you heard, but the UFC were nearly going to have a card this weekend, but basically they got overridden. They went to all this effort to basically try to put on this fantastic card, and it would have been great to watch whether there were fans watching in attendance or not. Dana went to all this effort, and then basically he got overridden by the higher ups. So it was basically what happened is the California governor got on the phone to Disney executives and ESPN, because ESPN actually they basically obviously film all the UFC shows, and that was the directive came from that high up to say you can't do what you're doing, even though he made all these plans and efforts and went to a tribal location where they were allowed to do what they were allowed to do. And anyway, we're going to have to wait probably at least a couple of months, I reckon, before we get any sport on TV.
Oh yeah, and it's a great time for some to be watching all those classic. Like I think
Yeah,
the sports that have planned well have got heaps of classic things that they're putting on YouTube or putting on TV and streaming right now. Like I know Formula One's been putting on a few.
have they?
They
'Cause
put on a few
you
good
are
races.
you are a bit of a Formula One fan, aren't you?
Yeah, yeah. It's really I'm long suffering as I'm not a Mercedes fan, so it's been quite a few years of I guess drought. But you know, I guess having a pause might be good for the other teams to catch up. Like fingers crossed.
So you like your Formula One, but you're not a fan of supercars, are you? You don't like not into that sort of stuff.
I could watch it, but really, it's more Formula One for me in
Yeah.
terms of motorsport, and occasionally MotoGP.
Yep.
Just because when I grew up, that was kind of the most exciting thing. It's a shame that for Formula One, it's not quite at that level anymore. Where back when you're watching, when I was young, like any one of 5 teams could have won a race. Now it's sort of the top 1 or 2, so it's a bit more of a procession now. But when they change the rules, it'll be
so going back to NBA. Were you a big fan of Jordan in the 90s? Did you follow the Chicago Bulls, or who did you follow back in the 90s?
I was more of a Detroit Pistons Isaiah Thomas fan, so that's probably.
I love it. That's good.
That's probably quite the opposite there. That they're always good rivals, but there was Boston Celtics, Larry Bird, and Magic with the Lakers. So it was really an interesting time for sports personalities. Is that, to me, that kind of era gave birth to those mega sports personalities that we know and love.
One thing that I'll never forget was when Chicago Bulls finally beat the Detroit Pistons in 1991, and they swept them in the conference finals of the playoffs. All the Pistons walked off the court, and none of them shook hands with any of the Chicago Bull players. Can you remember that?
Oh, yeah. Not good sportsmanship, but
no. What do you think they did?
But good rivalry.
Yeah, it was a good rivalry. That's something you never hear about again since then. But they decided that's what they were going to do. Walk off and.
I see that like booing for the winners sometimes, that's more of a Formula One thing though, so that's never nice. But intense rivalries bring that out. I'm sure the soccer fans can appreciate those kind of things.
Well, so what about I guess once the Michael Jordan era was over? I mean, who did you follow in the NBA sort of in that next decade after that? I mean, where you had sort of Kobe and Shaq, where you had the Spurs and you had the Boston coming through in the late part of the decade. And who did you still follow the NBA back in that decade?
Not as much. So yeah, I've really got into it again more recently. I think it was on I think it would have went off free to air at some point in that era, or maybe it just became harder to watch. When I was working in restaurants, I worked all crazy hours. So, there's a chunk of kind of life there where all those things, got kind of put to the wayside because it just, I guess as music kind of was more of an interest, something else had to give. But always a sentimental fan of Detroit. So I would have, I'd still stay being a fan of them at the moment. Yeah.
I mean, the Pistons did win a championship back then too. They had, I don't know, can you remember Ben Wallace, and you had Rasheed Wallace, all those guys?
I vaguely remember Ben Wallace, but
yeah. Rightio. So another thing we can talk about is one thing you hosted about just over a year or so ago was a whiskey tasting.
Oh yeah.
And that was a lot of fun, man. And you obviously know your whiskeys. And where did your interest start in whiskeys? I mean, how long have you sort of had an interest in getting all of that sort of stuff. That
Well, I've
selection.
always been partial to, Scotch and dry when I was younger, but I think working with different people, like it's sort of something that, okay, it was just sort of for me for so many years, just something to mix with ginger ale or whatever. But working with different people, and I think it, and Beth's granddad loves a good Lafroig smoky whiskey, so you know that kind of sparked a little bit of interest. Like, okay, people drink that neat. Okay, that's good. So it hasn't been too many years, but since I've been working at ACU, I've come as well to know of one guy who's a real enthusiast who puts me to shame. Like, would you know the kind of people that go to Scotland on tours and all that kind of stuff and know all of the history of the distilleries. So listening to them, they make a really good case for getting into it more and you know discovering whiskey, because when you think about it, it's like so many years of effort going into making something. So it's really nice to appreciate. So when you can think about it from kind of that perspective, like it's all the history that a distillery goes through to and all the experimentations to produce this, and then the way people in different countries like Australia, our distilleries pick it up and do interesting things in 2 or 3 years, like distilleries in Melbourne, because they can do it with the climate. I mean, there's so many interesting ways that it goes. So it's sort of something that that other people have shared with me, and that now I enjoy sharing with others. Like when I can get a nice bottle, it's something that I really enjoy sharing. Like when we opened the Octomore, I think in
Oh,
January of this year,
ooh, far out.
that was insane.
That was insane, man. That was. I remember that. Ooh, it was smoky. Was it really like a? Yeah, it was
Yeah,
just.
very smoky. High. There's a rating that they have in parts per million, but it's really high. And it was a nice 60% whiskey. So very good for just those little shots and
Mm,
really a different kind of smoky as well. Something that's like charred meat and funky
mm,
cheese. It's a really um, interesting flavor there, and so if you take that of when you're like a teenager, like when you or say early 20s, more relevantly, when you're first thinking about drinks, that kind of thing was like you wouldn't even know what you're having, you know you but now
yeah,
you can kind of
exactly.
sit back and appreciate it, share it with friends. It's like absolutely fantastic. And before lockdown, we had a little bit with James as well, just to finish off that
Oh,
bottle. So it did
oh.
last a couple of months, and
Well, they don't live too far away,
um,
do they? They just up the road somewhere.
yeah, we won't be able to see them for a while. But I'll have to think about what to open next time. Actually, a virtual whiskey tasting or a Zoom whiskey
Mate,
tasting would
mate,
really
do
be
that,
interesting.
mate. I'll
So
attend. I'll attend any sort of some virtual whiskey tasting. You come up with some ideas as to how we can do that. Everyone's got to buy. The problem is, if you've got 9 bottles, not everyone's going to have 9 bottles to
yeah,
taste.
well,
So I don't know
I'm
what we.
probably fine for that, but
Um, I know you asked, but I think it's a great idea nonetheless. It's just a way of how you go about it, and that sort of thing. That's for sure.
it's
One
probably
of the
something achievable we can work on. So
Oh,
I'll try
definitely,
work on that. Yeah.
yeah. Now, what about? I know that you got an appreciation there of whiskey. What about craft beer? Uh, is there any?
To me, craft beer is the only beer.
Yeah, of course. What's your favourite craft beer in our area?
I think Newstead
Yep,
Brewing Co. is definitely high up there,
yep.
but maybe Green Beacon's just that
I really,
touch
mate,
ahead.
you can walk to both those places, man.
Yeah.
But have you come across this one? Have you come across Soapbox beer?
I've heard of it, not had it.
I
Give
I
us a
just got
quick review.
Yeah, so Soapbox Beer, where it is, Gips Street, which is right near Chinatown in the Valley. Okay, so they've got like a shop front there. They've got about, well, there's at least 5 or 6 or more flavors. There's heaps of, there's a good, they've got some good IPAs and, some Indian pale ales, some pale ale, some Kolsch. But Soapbox Beer, I just saw them. I've been to their place before, and it's quite a good little establishment. These guys haven't been around too long, but I like the way they're branding it. So yeah, I actually got a carton of mixed, like 5 different types of flavors. I got them delivered about 3 or 4 days ago. I'm nearly gone through the carton. I'm nearly through a whole carton because that's how easy it is to drink. It's very tasty.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so you can get them. They're there, but I just decided to get them to deliver it, and they just dropped it off at the. They just sort of rang me when they arrived, and it's just like picking up a pizza. Basically, they just drop it off. And
Gips, is that a little back street in there? Is that?
Gips Street is sort of heading as you sort of head towards the Story Bridge. So you're going up towards the Story Bridge. So it's right near where Chinatown area is, Cathedral Place, all that sort of area there. It's a block from Elephant. It's in that sort of vicinity, really.
Yeah.
But it's a good brewery. I think the guys are quite good. I think they've got some good experimental flavors. This one I'm drinking at the moment, guava and passion fruit sour. So
I love a good sour.
So it's 3.5%, but it still tastes good.
Newstead Brewing Co. did some gin infused sour, a tropical sour that was quite interesting.
Which one was that?
Newstead Brewing Co.
Yeah,
I think it was Juniper Juice was the name of the. Very refreshing, nice change.
There's quite a lot of good. The only thing is, there's certainly a lot of good, craft brewing places around there, and I do like, Soapbox, easy to drink. Those other 2 ones, I'm a big fan of Green Beacon, I'm a big fan of Newstead. I don't mind some of the other classics from Byron Bay. Stonewood is quite nice. Burley are good in their own way. They've got that carb-free beer, which you got to acquire the taste a bit. They're the ones that I like. I mean, any other beers that we're missing there? Anything else?
I think if for people in Brisbane, I think Range Brewing is quite interesting. That's a little one in Newstead as well.
Have you had Felons? Have you tasted their stuff?
Felons is down near Howard Smith Wharves. I think that's really good for the experience of just going out and being there in the area. So it's a massive place, and
beer still tastes.
What I had there, I did like. Pardon?
I did like it too. Yeah.
And it's a great spot. Howard Smith Wharves. So looking forward to going back there when it's open.
And across the bridge, just as you go across the bridge to the other side to Kangaroo Point, there's one there called Sea Legs. Have you ever been to that? Have you had any of that?
No, I haven't heard of that. That's one to add to the list.
Sea Legs is we actually went there with a couple of mates. Probably about would have been nearly a year ago, I think. Nearly a year ago, and some good craft brew there as well. So there's so many places. There's so many good choices when it comes to beer, man. I tell you, we're sport for choice here in Brisbane. Really are.
Yeah, I actually think Brisbane has some of the best beers, I think, going, period. Along with, I do love Asahi as well, so I love a good Japanese beer, as with Japanese whiskey as well.
Japanese, so Japanese beer, I love it. I mean, I'm a big fan. The Asahi, I like the Asahi. You've been over to Tokyo, you know what it's like. You can just get an Asahi out of a vending machine, basically, can't you?
Oh yeah, and they have so many kinds, and if you know that your restaurant's sponsored by Asahi, you can get a nice frosty, tall beer, very cheap. Love Japan.
Yeah, Japan. I mean, I'll tell you what, we're living in an interesting world now, man. We don't know when we're going to be able to travel overseas. It's so up in the air right now. You just don't know when the next time you're going to be able to do that. How long do you reckon until we can travel overseas? What's your prediction?
That's really difficult because, depending on how things go, who knows if there's going to be any relaxing of any restrictions anytime soon. I assume that what we've got now is going to stay for at least 2 months to 3 months, depending. But I think overseas travel really, it might be done and dusted for this year.
Quite possibly, man. Quite possibly. It's an interesting world.
We did have plans of going maybe around September. Like we were thinking maybe take Leo to Singapore in September, but it might have to be September next year. But thankfully, a lot of the countries we're thinking of going to are doing really well at managing the situation. Like we love Hong Kong as well.
Hong Kong have done really well, man. Their stats. Their stats have been very impressive considering how many people live there and how crowded that place can get.
Taiwan as well are very good because they're quite comparable in total population to us, but of course a lot smaller country and so close to China. And I think they've got, at last count I saw, less than 500 cases or something. So that was, considering the amount of time, they're managing that really well.
I think both Australia have done a pretty good job overall, or maybe we've been a bit lucky as well, perhaps. But I mean, we are the lucky country when it comes to that.
I think we kind of got to where we needed to be. Maybe it took about a fortnight or 3 weeks longer than expected in terms of restrictions, but and the natural sort of distance we have sort of helps that. I think our cities are just not as crowded as many overseas. When you think of, we only have really certain pockets that are comparable. Yourself when you travel, maybe only 1 or 2 parts of Brisbane is anything like a major city overseas. Like maybe Sydney has parts that you think, oh yeah, this is a lot of people here. This is a bit like a part of Tokyo or something. But we do have that natural distance, which I think really has helped.
So where you live at the moment, do you go out for coffee in the morning ever at the moment in lockdown, or do you go out to pick up coffee or anything like that?
Maybe once every 2 days at the moment.
Okay. Yep.
I'd always go and stop at Wolf Coffee on my way to work. So that's one thing I'm missing because they've got fantastic coffee.
Where's that? Sorry?
Wolf.
Wolf, where's that?
That's at Hendra, actually. It's it could be Nunda. It's on Gurla Road. They really do have wonderful coffee. I think they're still open, at the moment. So on occasion, if we go out on the weekend or something, that might be just one place I'd think of going, because that's one of the things you miss is the morning coffee, etc. So if I have a walk before work, which is a good thing to do, I'll go downstairs and usually get something.
Do you sort of, with your coffee at the moment, what milks are you having? Do you have anything special like almond milk, macadamia milk, or just normal milk?
We have Nespresso at home, so with that I probably just have like a skim or trim or whatever. But a shop coffee, I always go full cream. I'm not one for almond milk or that kind of stuff.
I think I'm getting used to that sort of stuff now. I enjoy it. It's a little bit less carbs than normal milk. And I'm starting to get the taste to that sort of thing. So it's quite nice.
I couldn't quite get the taste. I did try it, but I just couldn't quite get there.
I hate soy milk, but I don't mind those. I don't mind macadamia milk. So I'd certainly have that again. So mate, we've actually probably been chatting for about more than 3/4 of an hour, I think. Believe it or not. But it's been good to catch up with my friend, man. It's been a while since we spoke. But we try to catch up every couple of months if we can. Obviously, we can't do it face to face at the moment, really, in a proper way. So I think it's been great. Thanks for coming and catching up on the Zoom.
Cheers, mate. Thanks. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah. So that's Dan. Any final words? Anything else? Anything final you wanted to add?
I guess if this is a bit of a work from home edition, just thinking about some of the nice things to reflect on. The way our workplace has been run during this has been really good. So the workplace culture of people and staying connected using like Zoom and Teams to keep up, it's really great. So that's part of this is as well, chatting to you. I think that's what people are going to need to do more of, get used to, and really embrace. In the next
6 months,
yeah. So people should have Zoom dinners, board games via Zoom or whatever, or and just enjoy those little simple things, and then keep in touch until we can see each other properly.
Yeah, man. And what about, lastly, anything on TV, any sort of Netflix or movies that you sort of watched in the last few weeks that you recommend?
Oh, Netflix. Oh, there's so many good things. If anybody gets a chance to watch The 100, I love that show. It's probably 5 seasons waiting for you there, but
is it called The 100? The 100.
Yeah, The 100. It's quite brutal, not quite as brutal as Game of Thrones, but I loved it. Just really, the new season of The Umbrella Academy, looking forward to that. I'm a bit of a DC guy, so I didn't mind Titans as well. And I would like to try Disney Plus to see The Mandalorian. I hear good things about that show, and who doesn't love Star Wars? But you got to have a bit of cheesiness. So occasionally we do partake in Riverdale. So if anybody, the first season of Riverdale, everybody should watch it. That was absolutely fantastic. You can probably dispense with a lot of shows after 2 or 3 years sometimes. When they make shows a little more complicated and have to make 20 episodes, to me they're not as good. But if you watch that show, the first season is just excellent.
Cool, man. I better let you go, mate. I'll let you get back to your life there.
Cheers, mate.
But it's been great to catch up with you, man. And cheers for that, eh?
Cheers, and hope to see you soon.
Likewise, mate. Thanks, and we'll keep chatting, and hopefully we can catch up in the next couple of months, man.
Take care, man.
See you too. Bye.
Bye.